Hey folks, Professor K here. Oh my gosh, we are learning so much this week. We've learned adjustment masks, we've learned clipping masks, we've learned layers, we've learned layer blending. You might just be like dizzy with all the stuff you're learning this week. But stick with it. Give it a try, experiment, play around, follow some of these tutorials because you can get some really cool effects using them. You don't have to learn this all at once. It's okay to take a break, and you can continue learning these effects as we go further in the course. But as you get the hang of some of these different effects, and as you start learning how they all work together, you'll then be able to combine them with what you've learned in Illustrator to come up with some really, really cool stuff. But for now, let's focus on layer masks. And I'm going to show you one more technique that's going to give you insight on how to do a really popular photo manipulation in these times, which is to overlay a photo on top of a person. Let's get started. All right, so here we have an image of a person and an image of a mountain. And this technique is really popular right now. What we're doing is we're overlaying the image of the mountain on top of the person, and they're looking up, and I've added a line of copy. The drive has always been inside you. So the idea is that you can have this kind of like big, wide open, dreamy mountain going on, and the idea is that it's inside you, right? Pretty cool concept. The way that you get to this effect is through the use of layer masks. So let's take a look at what's in our layers here before I show you through step by step. Let's break it down and see how we got to this final result. We have two images of a mountain. Now, just so that you can see what this mountain looks by itself, I'm going to release the clipping mask. And this is what the mountain looks like on its own. I'm going to go ahead and create it again, just so that you can see this whole thing. We are clipping that to text, the drive has always been inside you, as well as, let's hide this for a moment, this image of this person. So let's take off this, and now we can see what the person looks like by themselves. Let's take out the layer mask, disable it, and that's what the original photo looked like. If we were to clip it without the layer mask, we would see the entire mountain. So that's how this all works. And what will we remember from our last tutorial with layer masks? Light shows the subject, darkness or shadow hides the subject. So you're always painting with light on layer masks. Some people say, I have such a hard time with layer masks. I never understood them, Professor K. It was just the one part of Photoshop I couldn't get. Think of it like painting with light. Lightness shows things. Darkness hides things. If you shine a light, you'll see it. If you turn the light off, you'll no longer see it. That's all that layer masks are, is just painting with darkness and light. And that's how you show or hide parts of a photo. So let's go back to our original image here and start to look at how we create this image from start to finish. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. So if you haven't seen the layer mask tutorial before, if you didn't see my last video on layer masks, now's a good time to check that out, because I'm not going to go through and explain things as thoroughly as I did in that video. Let's get started. So remember that the goal with this layer mask is to mask out the background and have the person showing. That way we can have the photo clipped on top of it and showing inside them. So let's start by masking out the background here, including getting some of this really detailed hair in there. We're going to go over to channels, and remember that with the layer masks, this technique, you're always going to start with channels. Before we head over there, back to your layers palette, create a layer mask. Just start one up right now. It's going to have all white, and that's okay. Let's go to channels. We're going to click on our channels, and I want to pick the one. Let's turn this off so that we can see just the channel we want. So here's red, here's green, and here's blue. We're looking for the one with the most contrast between the subject and the background. Let's go with red. Red's usually a good choice in these circumstances. Command A to select all. Command A. If you ever have that problem, just click once. And then Command C to copy. go back to your RGB channel. That's very important to reset the image back to where it was. And then over in layers, to your layer mask, Option click to get into layer mask editing mode, Command V to paste. Now remember, this is going to be opposite of what we want. Let's go back to our photo and let's just use this nice bright red color to see what's happening with the mask. We can see that the subject is being masked out. That's not what we want. We want the opposite. So let's go back to our layer mask, Option click, Command I to invert. First, we're going to increase the contrast here with our levels, Command L. Let's bump up the darks here, bump up the lights. And again, we are just looking for a really well-defined edge, especially with hair. This is going to be a tougher one. We may need to go further that way, but the most important thing is, especially over here, we get a really nice clean edge because we can do a lot over here. We're not too worried about that. Now let's go in and quickly just use our brush tool, B, on the mask, and let's increase the size to quickly paint out with black some of the areas that we no longer want to show. And I'm going to get really close in here and just really get the edges of this person's arm nice and just real clean there before zooming back out. And then let's also clean up the edges around here, just so that looks really clean as well. Remember that the point of this is to get the light to show the person, the subject, and the darkness to hide the background. You might have to get in here really tiny, but that's okay. Good photo manipulation is all about the details. You want to be a perfectionist here. And notice how I'm using keyboard shortcuts heavily to switch between brush sizes, between black and white, to just really make this a lot easier. Let's see, I don't think this little detail here, these little details are really that important in making this a realistic photo, so I'm just going to go right over them. It's not like the hair above where I really want that detail preserved. I don't know that this is adding much here, so I'm just going to take it out for the time being. Going down. Hopefully you have a mouse in this class, or you have an external mouse or a tablet. A Wacom tablet is really good for this sort of thing if you get really serious about this. I have one of those and it's amazing for this sort of stuff. I'm just using my external mouse right now, but it can really save you some wrist fatigue with all the little movements when you're trying to do this type of detail work. Almost done here. Let's zoom out a bit. Even increase our brush size, just get really close in there before doing the details. You don't need to do any more work than you have to here. Rough it out first and then get in real close, just like that. You can see you can get pretty quick at it too. And all this detail work makes it worth it. It makes for a really clean, really good looking selection. It's okay to leave a little bit of gray here. That will actually make this look a little bit, this effect look a little bit more natural because it'll help blend the two photos together. So don't worry about necessarily removing every bit of that. It's okay to let a little bit of it stay. All right, so we've got a good silhouette of the person going here. Let's just turn back in here. And now we can see that a lot of the detail has been preserved here. At this point, let's stop. Normally I would go through and put the white back in here and kind of really remove some of this detail. But I actually want to see how this goes with the mountain photo on top of it. So let's go ahead and bring in our mountain photo from our downloads. Looks like mine's right here. Just gonna drag and drop on top and position it right down here. And now to get this to show on top of our subject here, I'm going to do right click and create clipping mask. And that actually looks really good. So imagine if I had gone through and, like the last video, I had removed all of this detail in the shirt. I would no longer be able to see any of the detail in this person's face, in the shirt, anything like that. Leaving a little detail in here actually benefits us. It actually makes it look more realistic with this effect. So what we really wanted to do was remove the background here. And now we can see that with this effect, it's looking really good. And in fact, it would be interesting just to see, you know, what are some of the different layer blending modes we have here? We've gone with normal, but, you know, maybe there's something else in here that makes for an even more interesting effect. Pinlight is like a lot more substantial in color, I guess. Here's luminosity too. That's kind of nice. I didn't do this as experimentation when I started this, but I'm actually really digging this one here. So here's Pinlight. And what I like about this is that it really brings out the detail in his portrait. Oh, wow, that's cool. This is amazing. Look at all of this interesting stuff that you can do. So like, what if we, I'm just getting all over the place with this. You know, what if we played with different blending modes? So here's multiply, here's color burn, screen, linear light, playing with the opacity. You know, some of these could be really interesting and even get your subject across even more clearly. I like to call these happy accidents when they happen. It's just funny how these things turn out sometimes. You just don't expect them to look as good as they do. All right, so here's our lorem ipsum. Let's just make it black for now. And we'll just say that's our line of copy. Let's scale this down a little bit. Oh, that's not gonna... We need some more room for the copy here, but we also need to kind of handle what's going on here. And notice with this effect that as long as we're moving both images at the same time, we're in a pretty good spot. All right, so now let's take this, copy, and then create a clipping mask on top of our text here. And so that we get the exact same effect. Let's see what I can do here. Let's just play around. Here's Pinlight. Here's normal. Here's another Pinlight. Create clipping mask. Oh, you know what? I see why it's not showing anything. Check this out. Look at what is giving it away. The top of the photo ends, see, before the type happens. So we actually need to move this up. That's why we're not seeing any changes here. Let's go ahead and select and move this up. There we go. That's a little bit better. What happens if we... Yep, that didn't work. Let's try... Yeah, that's much better. That's much closer. And if we wanted, we could even try different colors. And because we're using that layer blending mode, we get the benefit of that texture still coming in. So yeah, see how there's that nice little bit of noise alongside that really clean type? Cool, right? Phew! So that was a lot, huh? But you can see how you can really quickly begin to use layer masks to get really complex, beautiful effects that can showcase some really interesting concepts. Now in this last video, I'm going to show you where trying to create a realistic looking concept is a lot harder and some of the things that you'll need to watch out for. I'm going to tell you right now that I won't be successful. I just will not be successful at that because unfortunately I don't have the time at this moment to get a really good photo manipulation video together that actually makes two things that are in separate spaces look like they belong together. I'll give you the details on why that is in the next video. It's actually really hard to do. But for now, all of these are going to come together in that video and you'll see how you can apply them all together in your own advertisements. You might want to go for something a little more creative, a little more conceptual, and less photorealistic if you're having trouble with that, because I find it a lot easier to do this sort of thing than to actually try and trick the eye into thinking two objects from totally separate places belong together. So with that, and with that giant warning out of the way, I will see you in just a moment.